The great hall of Zorthor Prime was filled with fear. Alien leaders from different planets stood silently, their heads lowered. The air was heavy. In the center of the hall stood a large black cage made of living metal. Inside the cage, something moved. It growled low and deep. The sound made everyone shiver. The beast inside was called Dregmak. It was no ordinary monster. It had eaten soldiers, ripped through tanks, and destroyed cities with one scream. It was the personal pet of warlord Zarnok, the most feared alien. In the galaxy, warlord Zarnok stood tall on his throne. His armor shone like fire. His eyes glowed red. He was not just a ruler. He was death in physical form. Planets had fallen to him. Armies had bowed. And today, he wanted to crush Earth. The alien leaders had gathered to see Earth's representative. Zarnok had promised to show a message, one that would remind everyone what fear truly meant. Then the door opened. A human walked in. He looked simple. No armor, no weapon, just plain black clothes. His hair was short, his face calm. He didn't look angry. He didn't look scared. He just walked slowly toward the center, hands behind his back. Gasps filled the hall. "That's the human?" Someone whispered. "He doesn't even have guards. Why is he walking like that? Doesn't he know what's in the cage?" "Warlord." Zarnok grinned. "So you are the one they sent?" "Captain Raynor, correct?" Raynor nodded once. "That's right." Zarnok laughed loudly. "Good. Let's test your courage, human. My beast is hungry. Shall we see if your bones crunch like the others?" Raynor looked at the cage, then back at Zarnok. "You can try." The crowd fell silent. Was he serious? Zarnok snapped his fingers. The cage opened with a hiss. The monster stepped out. Dregmak was 10 feet tall, with skin like rock and eyes like glowing lava. Its mouth dripped with acid. Its claws were longer than swords. It growled again, louder. This time, the walls shook. Some alien leaders stepped back. Some even hid behind pillars, but Raynor didn't move. The beast took a step forward. Raynor stood still. Another step. Raynor kept his eyes on it. The beast stopped. It sniffed the air. Something was wrong. Usually it smelled fear. It fed on it. But now there was nothing. No fear, not even a little. It tilted its head and growled again, louder. Still, the human didn't move. "Is he frozen?" someone asked. "No," another said. "He's calm." The beast roared and charged. Gasps filled the air. Some looked away, but Raynor didn't flinch. The beast stopped inches from his face. Its teeth bared. Its acid breath filled the air. Raynor looked into its eyes, and the beast stepped back. The entire hall went silent. What just happened? One of the alien generals said, "He made the beast back down." "That's impossible." Warlord Zarnok stood from his throne, eyes burning with anger. "You dare mock me, human? That beast has killed warlords. It eats fear." "Maybe," Raynor said, "but I don't serve fear. I serve purpose." The beast made a strange noise, a low, confused growl. It circled Raynor, trying to find weakness. But there was nothing to attack, nothing to fear, nothing to break. Zarnok clenched his fists. He had brought the beast to make a point. But now it was failing him. Worse, it was afraid, and fear was a disease that could spread. "Explain yourself, human," he shouted. Raynor looked up at the warlord. "You want fear to win. But you forgot something. Humans don't fear monsters. We fight them. We become them. That's why you're scared too. You can see it. Deep down, you know your time is over." The words echoed across the hall. Even the beast looked back at Zarnok, unsure. Raynor stepped forward, past the monster, and stood right beneath the warlord's throne. He looked up, calm, steady, and completely without fear. The silence in the room felt like thunder. Everyone stared at him, the fearless human, who made a monster back down with nothing but his presence. The galaxy had seen war. The galaxy had seen beasts. But today, it saw something new. It saw a man who didn't flinch, and that scared them more than any monster ever could. The beast stood frozen. Its name was Dregmak, and across the galaxy, that name meant death. On the battlefield, it was a nightmare. Its scream melted armor. Its bite could crush bone. And its special gift, the one Zarnok loved most, was its hunger for fear. Dregmak didn't eat meat. It fed on emotion. Fear made it stronger. The more afraid the victim, the more power the beast gained. That's why it was perfect for war. That's why Zarnok never lost a battle. But now the beast was confused. It circled Captain Raynor slowly. Its nose twitched. It sniffed the air again and again. Nothing. No fear. No scent of panic. No shaking legs. No rising heartbeat. Only silence. Captain Raynor stood like a statue, arms at his sides, his breath steady. His eyes followed the beast, but there was no tension in his muscles. No sweat. No signs of fear. The alien leaders watched in silence, their eyes wide, their minds racing. This. This shouldn't be happening, whispered a tall blue-scaled general. Another alien queen stepped forward. Has the beast ever stopped like this? Zarnok's jaw tightened. Never, he said, low and cold. Dregmak stopped. It stared at Raynor. Then it took a step back. That single motion sent shock through the hall like an explosion. The monster that fed on fear was retreating. Raynor tilted his head, just slightly, as if to ask, "What now?" Dregmak gave a soft growl, a sound no one had heard before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hunger. It was confusion, or maybe respect. The warlord's eyes blazed. "Attack him!" he barked, but the beast didn't move. Zarnok's voice thundered, louder now. "Do it!" Still, the beast didn't move. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, almost like a bow. Raynor didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply looked into the monster's eyes. He understood what was happening. And more importantly, he expected it. Zarnok slammed his fist on the throne. "You dare disobey me?" The beast turned its glowing eyes toward Zarnok. For one strange moment, the beast and the human stood side by side, both staring at the warlord, and in that moment, the room changed. The fear shifted. No longer centered on the beast. No longer controlled by the warlord. Now. They feared the human. Raynor finally spoke, quiet but firm. "You've used fear as a weapon for too long, Zarnok. But you forgot one thing. Fear only works on those who give in to it." The council began whispering. Some leaned back, some looked at the exits. One by one, the bravest aliens began to doubt their loyalty to Zarnok. A thin alien ambassador from the Zenka Empire asked, "Is this some kind of human trick?" "No trick," Raynor answered without looking at him. "Just truth. Dregmak can't feed on what doesn't exist. And fear, well, that's just a choice." A silence followed, thick like fog. Then suddenly, Dregmak did something no one had seen before. It sat down, right next to Raynor, like a dog next to its new master. The alien crowd gasped. Zarnok's eyes widened in disbelief. His face darkened. He rose from his throne slowly, as if the weight of the moment pressed down on his body. "You've stolen my beast," he said in a low, dangerous voice. Raynor shook his head. "No, your beast chose. It saw what real strength looks like, and it wasn't fear." The room, once full of power and pride, now felt unstable. Zarnok's commanders avoided his eyes. His advisors whispered. Even the guards gripped their weapons tighter, unsure who they were protecting anymore. For the first time in years, Warlord Zarnok felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't rage, it wasn't hate, it was doubt. And that, to him, was worse than death. Raynor stepped forward. Dregmak followed without a sound. "Next time," Raynor said, pausing near the throne. "Don't bring a monster to scare a human. Unless you're sure the human isn't the real monster." With that, he turned and walked away. The great beast followed at his side, silent as a shadow. Behind them, the galaxy watched, and the legend began to grow. Long before Captain Raynor stood before the beast, long before the alien council gasped at his fearlessness, a secret mission had been written in Earth's hidden war rooms deep underground. Beneath layers of silence and steel, Raynor was never meant to be a diplomat. He was not born in the spotlight, nor trained to speak in shiny rooms filled with alien kings. He was something far older, something far colder. Raynor was part of Project Hollow Mind, a human experiment buried so deep not even Earth's presidents knew the full truth. A soldier built not just to fight, but to think in silence, feel nothing, and see through fear like it was glass. He wasn't fearless because he was brave. He was fearless because fear had been removed once for good in a special chamber. Earth's scientists had rewired his brain. They had scrubbed every emotion, scanned every nightmare, and erased every instinct to panic. They replaced fear with logic, panic with strategy, emotion with purpose. Raynor became a mirror. When enemies looked at him, they didn't see anger. They saw themselves, and that terrified them. Back then, he had no name. Just a number, Human 09. His first mission was on the moon colony. He ended a rebellion without firing a single bullet. He walked into the enemy bunker alone, stared at their leader. And within minutes they surrendered. Why? Because he didn't blink. Because he didn't shake. Because their weapons meant nothing to him. He was the perfect answer to a new kind of war, one where fear was the first shot fired. So when Earth heard that warlord Zarnok had a creature that ate fear, Raynor was the only choice. No generals argued. No one else volunteered. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded once, took the black uniform, and walked into the shuttle. Now, standing in the center of Zarnok's hall, Raynor knew his purpose. He wasn't there to make peace. He was there to study the enemy, to measure their limits, to break the chain of fear they held over the stars. And the moment Dregmak bowed, Raynor knew he had already won the first round. But the mission wasn't over. Not yet. From the corner of the throne room, a strange mechanical insect flew toward him, silent, small, watching. Raynor didn't look at it, but his inner chip recognized the drone. It was Earth tech, stealth grade. A secret message blinked across his neural lens. Eyes confirmed. Stage 2 unlocked objective. Weaken warlord psych link. Do not engage. Observe and move close. Raynor blinked once to confirm. The message vanished. Turned his head slightly and glanced at the warlord. Zarnok had returned to his throne, but the rage behind his eyes still burned. Raynor took a slow step toward him. Everyone watched. The beast followed again, silent and obedient. "Interesting," Zarnok said, voice like thunder wrapped in smoke. "You didn't even bring a translator." "I don't need one," Raynor answered. "I speak the language that rules understand power without fear." Zarnok chuckled. "Is that what you think you are? Power?" "No," Raynor said calmly. "I'm just the mirror. What you see when your monster turns away from you." That made the warlord rise again, slowly, even at full height, with glowing armor and sharpened claws. Zarnok couldn't shake the feeling that he was being hunted, not the other way around. "You're not just a soldier," the warlord said. "You were made, forged, engineered." Raynor didn't deny it, because it was true. Zarnok narrowed his eyes. "Then that makes you weak." "No," Raynor replied. "That makes me designed to end men like you." The alien lords gasped. XARNOK, single quotes, S. Claws twitched. The air felt sharp now, like a wire pulled tight. Raynor stepped forward one more time. He stood beneath the warlord's throne again. Same place, same silence, same stare. Behind him, the beast remained still, Around him, the aliens held their breath. But inside him, Raynor had no heartbeat fast enough to shake him, no voice loud enough to break him. Only purpose. Only mission. Stage 2 complete. The message blinked again across his eye. Zarnak PSY link in stress mode, target vulnerability 41% and rising. Keep. Pressure fears Biarrikange. Raynor didn't smile. He only stood. Perfect mirror, letting the enemy destroy himself from the inside out. The mission was working. And the galaxy had no idea what Earth had just sent into their war room. Not a man, not a weapon, but something far worse, a human with no fear, and nothing left to lose. Asterisk, the throne room trembled, not from footsteps, not from battle, but from the silence pressing in like a storm ready to break. Warlord Zarnak sat still for too long. His beast Dregmak had betrayed him by kneeling to the human. His council, dozens of alien rulers and warriors, had seen it all. And worse, they had started to whisper. Not in awe of Zarnak, but in awe of the human, the one who didn't flinch, the one who had done nothing and yet changed everything. Then Zarnak stood. The sound of his armor rising echoed like thunder. His eyes, once proud and sharp, now burned with fury. His voice, when it came, shook the walls. You dare embarrass me? He growled. No one answered. Raynor didn't move. You come into my court, wearing no armor, showing no fear, making my monster bow? He roared. Still, Raynor stood like stone. His hands remained at his sides, calm, focused. Dregmak, the beast, stood beside him, not trembling, but still watching the warlord with uncertain eyes. Zarnak's claws extended from his gauntlets with a hiss. The beast reacted, not with loyalty, but with hesitation. That was the final crack. The warlord bellowed. You've poisoned my creature. You've turned it against me. I should burn you alive in this hall. Raynor finally blinked. You could try, he said quietly. Zarnak moved. Fast. He leapt from his throne like a falling meteor. His claws flashed. The air split. He came down toward Raynor, ready to strike, but something stopped him. A growl, deep. Warning. Dregmak. The monster stepped between them, and it snarled at Zarnak. The warlord froze mid-attack, landing a few feet away. His glowing eyes stared into the beast's molten ones. You protect him? He asked, disbelief cracking his voice. Raynor said nothing. The beast answered with action. It placed one clawed foot forward, and then another. Step by step, it walked toward Zarnak. Not as a pet, not as a servant, but as a challenge. The alien council erupted into murmurs. He's losing control. One general whispered, the beast has chosen the human. Another gasped. Double quotes, no one chooses over Zarnak. No one survives it, hissed a third. But no one moved, because no one wanted to get between a monster and a warlord fighting for power. Zarnak's breath was ragged. Rage boiled in his chest, but fear crept in too quiet, cold, and unwanted. Raised a hand toward the beast, issuing a mental command through their ancient bond. The beast didn't respond. Instead, Dregmak growled again. Zarnak's hand trembled. The room watched in awe. The warlord, once the galaxy's unshaken hammer, now stood uncertain, blocked by his own weapon. Raynor finally took a step forward. Your mistake wasn't raising a monster, he said quietly. Your mistake was thinking monsters stay loyal to fear forever. Zarnak's lip curled. You think this proves anything? Raynor looked at him. It already has. Behind him, the beast stood still but taller, as if it had finally broken a chain that had held it for years. You ruled with terror, Raynor continued. But terror fades, and when it does, your empire falls with it. Zarnak bared his teeth. Then let's see what survives, you or me. He activated a switch on his armor. Blades unfolded from his forearms. A shield shimmered to life on his chest. Energy pulsed through his body. But Raynor Didn't prepare to fight. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just stepped closer. Zarnak charged. But the moment he did, Dregmak lunged. The beast knocked him to the floor with a roar that cracked the ceiling. Zarnak rolled back. Stunned, his eyes flicked from Raynor to the beast betrayal twisting his face. He had built a throne of fear, and now, both human and monster stood above him. Raynor said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence around him was the message. Zarnak crawled back to his throne, breathing hard. His armor sparked. His pride bled out on the floor. Behind him, his council no longer looked to him for orders. They looked at the human. They looked at the beast. And for the first time in 100 years, they looked for a new kind of leader. One not built on fear, but on strength that didn't scream. Strength that stood still and never flinched. The throne room, once ruled by fire and fear, now stood frozen in silence. All eyes were on the beast. Dregmak, the monster that once fed on screens, crushed cities, and obeyed only its master. Warlord Zarnak stood still. Its body, a wall of muscle and shadow, loomed between the warlord and the human. The glowing veins along its neck pulsed slowly, like a living storm trying to calm itself. And then it moved, not to strike, not to roar, but to kneel. The beast slowly bent its massive limbs. Its claws touched the cold floor. Its chin lowered. Its back curved down until its head rested lightly by Raynor's boots. The monster bowed. A creature that had never bowed before. Not to kings, not to warlords, not even to fear itself. Gasps filled the room like crashing waves. The council of alien leaders, once whispering in doubt, now stood in stunned silence. No one had ever seen anything like this, not in all the history of the intergalactic order. Warlord Zarnak, sitting wounded on his throne, looked like a shadow of his former self. His armor was cracked. His hand gripped the throne's edge, trying to hold on to what little power he had left. He watched, helpless, as his own weapon of terror surrendered, not to force, not to magic, but to something far more terrifying to a tyrant: respect. Raynor said nothing. He didn't step back. He didn't raise his arms. He simply placed one hand gently on the beast's head. Dregmak closed its eyes. It accepted the touch. Monster had chosen. It had lived its whole life following fear. But now, it followed peace. The weight of that moment shook the council. One by one, alien leaders looked to each other. Something was changing, and fast. This wasn't just a human diplomat. This was a symbol. A message from Earth. We do not bow. We do not break. And even your monsters will walk with us. The silence was broken by a trembling voice. He controls it now, whispered a yellow-eyed alien with a scarred neck. No, replied a gray-skinned elder. He doesn't control it. He earned it. From the shadows, Earth's hidden drone watched silently, blinking new instructions across Raynor's neural lens. Phase 3 complete. Dregmak, is nitrogen monoxide longer hostile? Begin Intel Domino Council Trust Fracture UNDRW. To confirm, he raised his head and looked slowly across the hall, not speaking, but letting his gaze settle on each alien leader. They felt it. Not threat, not dominance. But certainty. This human wasn't afraid of anything. Not claws, not warlords. Not monsters. And that kind of calm could not be faked. The warlord's fury cracked into desperation. He stood up, shouting, "It's still mine. That beast was made from my blood. I raised it with pain. It belongs to me, not to this soft-spoken earthworm." Dregmak growled. The sound wasn't wild like before. It was cold, measured, protective. It stood up, not to attack, but to place itself between Raynor and Zarnak again. The message was clear: try it, and you'll see what happens. Zarnak's fingers curled, but he didn't move. He couldn't, because he was finally realizing ... He was no longer feared. And when you rule by fear, losing it is the same as death. Raynor took one slow step forward, and Then another dot, until he stood right in front of Zarnak, looking up into the warlord's trembling eyes. "I didn't come here to take your beast," he said softly. "I came here to show the galaxy what real strength looks like." Zarnak didn't answer. He couldn't. Raynor turned his back and walked away. The beast followed, walking beside him, not behind. Together, man and monster moved through the council. Hall past shocked nobles, speechless generals, and blinking guards. The heavy doors opened without command. Raynor walked through them as if they had always been his. And just before the doors closed, a voice from one of the seats called out, "Captain." "Raynor, wait." He paused and turned his head slightly. The voice belonged to a reptilian governor from the outer systems. If Earth can earn the loyalty of that creature, perhaps it is time we rethink our treaties. Others murmured in agreement. The domino was falling. Zarnak watched it all from his throne, breathing hard, sweating, fading. And he knew. The human didn't win with weapons. He won with presence. With purpose. And worst of all, with no fear. The heavy doors closed behind Raynor and the beast, but their presence still lingered inside the hall like smoke after fire. The council chamber, once filled with confidence and fear-driven loyalty, was now full of something alien to warlord Xarnok Kalan. He stood alone in front of his throne, cracked armor barely holding together. His chest rose and fell in silence. His glowing eyes scanned the room, but no one met his gaze. The alien leaders were no longer listening. They were thinking. Whispering. Recalculating. The warlord's grip tightened on his spear. He could still fix this. He could still take back the room. He could kill the human. He could destroy the beast. He could silence the whispers with blood and power. All it would take was one order. One command. But as his mind screamed for violence, his body did something it had never done before. It hesitated. Because deep inside, Warlord Zarnak understood something terrifying. He didn't know how to fight a man who feared nothing. He could crush bones, burn cities, control monsters. But how do you crush silence? How do you burn someone who doesn't even flinch? He had never been taught how to fight respect. On the other side of the massive steel doors, Raynor stood in a long hallway of stars. He didn't speak. He didn't rest. He waited. Dregmak stood beside him, calm and still. Suddenly, the doors hissed and opened again. A figure stepped out. It was High Speaker Veltar, one of the oldest members of the Intergalactic Council. She had ruled her people for 400 years. She had seen wars, betrayals, and alliances built on fear, but she had never seen anything like what happened today. Her purple robes dragged across the polished floor as she approached. Raynor turned slightly, acknowledging her. "You've shaken more than a throne today, human," she said softly. "You've shaken how we see strength." Raynor didn't respond. She continued. "I remember when Zarnak first unleashed the beast. Dozens surrendered before it even attacked. We followed him out of survival. But now your calm has made our fear look small." Raynor finally spoke. "Then choose something else." Veltar narrowed her eyes. "Choose what, exactly?" "Choose strength that protects," he said, "not strength that threatens." Behind her, other council members began to step out slowly, cautiously, like people waking from a long dream. One by one, they filled the hallway. Each of them had a choice to make: remain under Zarnak, where fear ruled, or side with Earth, a small planet, but with a man who had just turned a beast into a friend, and silence into a weapon, back in the throne room. Warlord Zarnak still stood alone. A single advisor, nervous and pale, approached him and whispered, "Warlord, your hold over the council is breaking. If we act now, we might still contain it." Zarnak didn't respond, because he knew contain. What? The beast no longer answered him. The council no longer feared him. And Earth had just shown that even monsters could change. He stared at his hands. Claws. Built for violence. Built for a world where fear solved everything. But that world was ending. He didn't know how to live in the next one. Outside, Raynor received another silent message through his neural link. Alliance shift underway. 7 of 12 council members show support Zarnak's influence down to 38%. Recommend final phase trigger. The offer. Raynor nodded. He turned to Veltar and the others. Earth won't rule you, he said. We don't want empires, we want balance. Peace through strength, not control. Veltar looked around at her peers, then asked, and if we choose peace, what becomes of Zarnak? Raynor's eyes were steady. That's not for me to decide, he replied. That's for you to choose. He ruled you with fear. Now he'll face what he gave. In that moment, the galaxy shifted. Not with war, not with fire, but with a choice. The council would vote. They would break or keep their chains. But now they had seen something new, a different kind of power, one that didn't roar, one that didn't demand, one that stood silent while the world changed around it. And Dregmak, the monster once used to crush rebellion, lowered its head again, this time not in fear or confusion, but in peace. Raynor placed a hand on its shoulder. Beast didn't flinch. And neither did the man who had made the galaxy. Remember, fear isn't power. Choice is. Word traveled fast across the stars. In less than one galactic day, over 1,000 systems knew the story. A human had made warlord Zarnak's beast kneel. Not with violence, not with force, but with calm, with stillness, with no fear. They called him many names now, the Mirror Man, the Silent Storm, the human without fear. But for the rulers of distant worlds, for tyrants who ruled by fear and pain, he became something worse. He became a warning. Inside the central chambers of the intergalactic council, a vote was held. 12 members, 12 voices, 12 worlds that had once obeyed Zarnak without question. This time, they questioned everything. 7 raised their hands for independence from fear, from Zarnak, from darkness. 3 abstained. 2 stayed loyal. The vote passed. The council would no longer follow the warlord, and just like that, Zarnak's empire cracked. Raynor stood at the edge of the chamber, silent as ever. His mission was complete. But he didn't celebrate. He didn't cheer. That wasn't his way. Dregmak, the beast, stood beside him like a guardian. Once feared by all, now it watched peacefully, no longer hungry for fear, but calm and quiet in the presence of its new companion. The warlord? Gone. After the vote, he had vanished into the shadows. Some said he fled to the outer systems to rebuild. Some believed he was hiding, ashamed and broken. Others whispered that he was still watching, waiting for the fear to return. But at UPULDN single quotes did not now. Not after Raynor. When the council declared Earth an equal voice in the new alliance, Raynor didn't react. He simply nodded once and began walking toward the exit. Dregmak following in silence. Alien reporters crowded the gates. Captain Raynor, how did you control the beast? Do humans use mind weapons? Will Earth now take the galaxy? Raynor paused. Then said just 6 words. We don't take. We stand still. That sentence broke across media waves like lightning. Millions of systems heard it. And in those words, people found hope. Because strength didn't have to mean fear. It could mean control. Patience. Presence. Back on Earth. Leaders watched from underground command bunkers. They didn't cheer either. They knew this mission wasn't about power, it was about position. Earth was no longer seen as weak or small. Now, even the stars watched Earth with caution, not because of its weapons, but because of one man who didn't flinch. Generals whispered about building more like Raynor. Project Hollow Mind would expand. But deep inside, they also feared what they had created. Not because Raynor disobeyed, but because he showed that one man without fear could shift the course of history. And that kind of strength was unpredictable. Before Raynor left the council world, Veltar approached him one last time. Your presence will echo for centuries, she said. The galaxy will never forget what happened here. Raynor looked up at the stars. They shouldn't remember me, he said. They should remember what happened when fear stopped working. She smiled faintly. Still, they will remember. You. He walked away. Dregnak followed. Two legends. Walking into silence. The galaxy watched and trembled. Not because of the monster, not because of the warlord, but because a single human had proved something terrifying, that sometimes the quietest one in the room is the most dangerous of all. And he had no need to shout, because even the stars were listening.